speaker is Connie Eble of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, who's going to talk to us on From French to English in Louisiana, the Prudhomme family's story.
When we think of the French heritage of Louisiana today, we generally think about the area of southern Louisiana that the Louisiana State Legislature in 1971 designated as Acadiana. Those 21 parishes make up what's usually called now the Cajun Triangle, and it is said that Lafayette is the capital of the Cajun Triangle. And on this map, you'll see I made an effort to outline that area. You can see it running along there. And below that is what's called Acadiana, and this is called the Cajun Triangle. The French language was maintained as the primary language of that area there in the southern part of the state until probably the Second World War, almost a century and a half after the area had been incorporated into the United States by the Louisiana Purchase. However, French had been the language of the population of European descent in other parts of the Louisiana Purchase area as well, including the farmlands drained by the Red River in the northwest part of the current state of Louisiana. That part of the state, like the city of New Orleans, relinquished French as the language of public life by the time of the Civil War. Michael Prudhomme, in his article, Anglophone Slaves in Francophone Louisiana, gives evidence that after the transfer of the territory to the United States, the cotton plantations of the area relied on purchasing slaves from the United States, that is, slaves whose language was English rather than French, and that the complexities of language contact situations occasioned by this influx of Anglophone slaves aided in the loss of French. The plantation records that Prudhomme uses in this study are from the area around Natchitoches, Louisiana, the oldest European settlement in the Louisiana Purchase territory. It was founded in 1714. And if you look on your map, it is in the northwestern part of the state there near the Red River. Okay? And that's Natchitoches, Louisiana, founded in 1714. The surnames of the slave purchasers that Prudhomme lists in his article, and those were Louard, Cuvier, and Prudhomme, show them to be part of a network of white Creole planters who descended from the earliest French settlers in the area and who were related by birth or marriage or both to one another. These three men indeed show up in the family papers of the descendants of Jean-Pierre Philippe Prudhomme, 1673 to 1739, a merchant and trader who settled in the Natchitoches area in 1716. That is really when it was just first beginning, because in 1714 it was just a little military post. The original Louisiana Prudhomme, who settled there in 1716, had sons and grandsons who prospered, and in 1821, the Prudhommes moved into a new home on the banks of the Red River, about 13 miles outside of the town. Subsequent generations lived there until the 1990s. In 1997, the house and some of the land, now known as Oakland Plantation, were taken over by the National Park Service as part of the Cane River Creole National Park. The family papers have made their way to three main depositories: the Watson Memorial Library of Northwestern Louisiana State University in Natchitoches, the Historic New Orleans Collection, and the Southern Historical Collection of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. The comments that I'll make today are based on the portion of this one family's papers that are available assume that these documents were written by Creoles, and by that I just mean people who had been living there, natives, Native Europeans, who were born before or shortly after the Louisiana Purchase, then the authors of these documents were probably speakers of French or spoke French and perhaps some Spanish. About the family itself, they were people of privilege who by and large had made their fortunes and acquired their high social status in New France, not back in France. They were Catholic, but they were not particularly pious from my reading of the record. That might be my prejudice. They were slave